Hello, welcome back to GOT. Now we've got the big test you all been waiting for, the Honor Magic V5 versus the Oppo Find N6. Now, if you're wondering why I'm not testing the V6, well, hang on and I'll tell you. Let's go. So right now, the Honor Magic V6 is only out in the Chinese version, and I'm not about to buy one. And I didn't get one for free. I don't rank up there with the other big YouTubers to get one. So I still have the V5 that I paid for. And I had to buy the Oppo Find N6 with my own money as well. So I am not influenced by either one. This is all my own review. And we are going to put them to the same test I put all these foldables, all my phones through. And we're going to see who comes out ahead. Let's get started. So the first most common thing we do is we want to look at the comparison of the quality. They are both really good quality. I like them both pretty much the same. You can see that the Honor Magic is a little less round than the Oppo as far as the lens, but it is quite a bit thicker, if you can see that there in the screen above. Now, as far as the thinness, believe it or not, the Honor Magic V5 is still a little bit thinner than the Find N6. I'm going to call this the V5 and this the N6 just to speed things up and make the communication a little clearer. Looking at the two of them side by side, you can see that the V5 looks a little thinner. That's because it's more rounded. Now, the Honor Magic is round, and I like the feel of both of them in the hand. They both feel really great, and they both have premium hinges on them. And, you know, I feel really no difference in the two of them as far as that goes. They are very comfortable. Now, the N6 looks a little thinner when you take a look at them, but, you know, I think it's because it's taller. But lay these down side by side, one to another. The Honor actually is a little wider simply because it's got rounded glass. Now, the Honor V6 supposedly has flat glass, which is very similar to that what you have here in the N6. It's flat. It's not rounded on the edge. And I think I might prefer that better than the rounded edge because it's hard to get a screen protector to stick on this. I mean, I've got them, and you got to get the soft ones on this so it really sticks, but I prefer to put a glass one on there because they're easier to clean. But that's the major difference on these screens. A little bit rounded on the edge where this one's squared off. Now, as far as the button placement, you know, they're all pretty much the same. You've got all the buttons here, but Vivo Vivo does the same thing, but Oppo, or I was told Oppo actually has this extra button right here that's programmable. You got a few things you can do with it. You don't have anything like that on the Honor, but you know what? I never use it anyway. I didn't use it on the Vivo, and I don't seem to be using it here on the Oppo either. So it just really all depends on you whether you like that extra button or not. Now, they both have the touch sensitive power button and are very responsive, turn on really quickly with it. And I like them both. I find that they both respond exactly the same. And I think you're going to hear a lot of that in this video, how there's a lot of things that are exactly the same. But at the same time, there are some differences. So let's do a thin test because people like to see this. Which one is actually thinner? And there's only one way to really prove that, and that's with my level here. My table is level, if you can see that here from the top view here. And when I put the level right there on the phones themselves, you can see wherever it happens to be leaning, that is the phone that is thicker. And if you could see from here, check out my table level. They are close to the same. It's barely leaning towards the Oppo, but I think they're both, I mean, I don't really feel a change here, a lip or anything on either one of them. It's pretty close to the same all the way. You know, if it's leaning anywhere, it is leaning just barely towards the Oppo, but I don't really think it's enough to make a difference. Where there is a difference is once you put it on the cameras. Oh my gosh, look at that. You can tell that the Honor camera is extremely thicker than the Oppo. Look at that bubble. That tells us the story right there. So we've got the Honor Magic, which seems to be just a hair thinner, but when it comes to the camera, it's a whole lot thicker. Now, as far as the way these things feel in the hand, they are really close in weight. You've got 217 grams on the Honor, and then 225 grams here on the Oppo. So it's a little bit heavier, but I mean, I can't really feel the difference. And as far as these camera bumps, if you don't like the camera bump, then you don't want these phones. But you know, they seem to work fine with me. I like the placement because I can rest my finger on there, and it just, I don't know, it never gets in the way to me. You hear a lot of people complaining how it's in the way, but I don't see that. Now let's see how these things operate and talk a little bit about the software. Now, talking about the software on both of them, when you take a look at them here, you can see that they both look the same size, you know. But like we said earlier, the Honor is just a little bit thicker, but the Vivo is a bit taller. And you can't see it as much here on the outside. You wait till we open this up and look at the inside. But I wanted to show you how they both have really close to the same type of setup. You can make long, skinny apps or folders here on both of them, and see, look at that long one. So what's really cool about having these large folders, you just tap on the app right there and it opens. You don't have to open up the folder, you know, to get to the app, which is really cool. Now, where the Oppo is a little bit better than the Honor, and I really love this feature, is if you have additional apps in the folder. For example, this one right here, you can see they're stacked right here in the corner. So I got to touch that to get to the rest of the apps, and then there's another page right there to get to those apps. You know, that's one way to see it. So that Office folder is really full. And now looking here at the Oppo, you can see it's got, you know, additional apps in that folder as well. And I can touch them and open up the folder and go back and forth just like you do on Honor. But this thing's even better because you can just slide right here in the folder. You can just slide it over, and then those apps are right there. I think that is so cool. Where here, if I want to get to, say, my Google Drive, I've got to open it up to get to it. Where here, I can just slide over. I can see it there, slide over, and there it is, and touch it. I mean, that is a really cool feature, and I like the software on the Oppo, I think, better than what's on the Honor. It's just really, really intuitive, and I just really like that feature. Now you can also see on both these, you can pinch them and you can customize them. You can go into wallpaper and you can customize them any way you want. I like using the motion here. I like using a lock screen with my wife on it. You know, this one I just have a motion lock screen. You know, you can customize them any way you want, and you know, have a backdrop there in the back. I think it's really cool. Now they both have SIM cards in them, and they both perform the same as far as internet. Let's go ahead and do a quick internet test. Something I want to point out, though, is here on the Oppo, it says that I am on LTE. I don't understand, but then it also says 5G. Here it's 5G. So I'm not quite sure why it shows us VO LTE, but it doesn't seem to matter because they both get close to the same speeds. As you see here, they're both ramping up. The Honor seems to always connect first and start this test first. But, you know, you can see right here, the Oppo seems to be doing a little better. They kind of trade off. It really all depends. You know, these signals are not all that consistent. But as you can see here, it looks like the Oppo actually performed better. And doing the upload test, the Honor is very slow. But for some reason, the Oppo just kind of stalled out there. I don't know what's going on. Show me the upload speed. So it looks like it's doing about double the speed. But again, like I said, it's not very consistent. Let's go ahead and turn on Wi-Fi once again, and we'll do the Wi-Fi test. I do have Wi-Fi 7 in my house. We can only do one at a time when you do Wi-Fi because they would end up having to share the waves there together and one slowing down the other. I do have the gigabit up and down, which is really nice. It took us several years to get it. I only had it for the last few months, but I'm really loving this high speed. Right now we are in the studio, and the router and Wi-Fi hotspot is between 10 and 15 feet from me. A gigabyte down, gigabyte up. Does anybody ever get those speeds when you're supposed to? But anyway, as you can see, very close. Okay, the Oppo ran a little bit faster coming down, and it looks like it may be a little faster on the upload. Okay, looking over here at the specs, they both run Wi-Fi 6 and 7, so they're both right there. It's just, maybe it's the newer radio or whatever, but I bet I could test these 10 times and they'd be trading off which one does better than the other. So the bottom line is they are both fast. And just to open up some apps, just to check them out and see how they do, You know, for some reason, the Honor was a little bit faster on that one. Let's go ahead and open up Chrome, and let's see, right there on both of them. Again, it looked like well, nope, it just now finished. Okay, it may have appeared faster, but let's open up my calendar here on both. Yeah, the Honor was a little bit faster there. Let's open up something like my Files app here on both. They were both like instant, so that was good. Speed, you're not going to notice a difference in speed on your day-to-day use on either one of these. You can see here, they both just kind of drill through everything. You know, they are both great. So as far as performance, you're not going to find anything really different to complain about on your day-to-day use of these things. Now let's go ahead and open these bad boys up and see how they look on the inside. You know, you've got a much bigger surface here now on the Oppo. You can see here, try to line them up so you can see the difference. You can see it's quite a bit difference. It's a lot larger in diagonal than the Honor Magic. Honor Magic is, what is it, 7.95, where this is 8.1 in diagonal. So that's quite a big difference. And then you want to see the crease, okay, or the creaselessness of them both. Yeah, let's turn them off, and that way you can see it better. You can see here, there's barely, other than the fingerprints, you could barely see a crease on this thing. It's hard to see it, where on the Honor, you can see it, you know, just about at any angle. But of course, once you turn the screens on these things, there is no seeing a crease, you know, especially on the Oppo or the Oppo. It's hard to see that crease. You know, I can go on all day trying to see it, and you can see it's barely there. But the thing is about foldables these days, doesn't matter which one you have, you're looking at them straight on, as you can see there in the above camera, and you can't see the crease when you look at these directly. You know, who watches their phones at an angle like this? You know, nobody does. You look at it straight. You know, a lot of folks, you know, really live by benchmarks. Well, if you watch all the big channels, they compare all these things with benchmarks. And I just don't believe these benchmark apps, because they really don't tell the story. And I'll prove that to you here in just a moment. First off, let's take a look at these things and talk about the specs. You know, when you take these things and put them together, the specs are pretty much really doggone close. You have a Snapdragon 8 Gen Elite in the Honor and an 8 Gen Elite 5, the next generation, in the Oppo. But the Oppo has 7 cores where the Honor has 8 cores. Is there a difference? I think so. We'll find out in performance. Now let's go ahead and look at the setting on both of them here. They both have 16 gigabytes of RAM, as you can see right there. All right. Now, when you look at the battery too, you've got 6,000 milliamps over here. And on this one, you got 5,820 milliamps. It lasts all day long without an issue. I can even get a couple days off on both of them. When you look at both of them, they both have the same Android 16, and they are both global versions there. So they both get all the same Google and US branded software, which I really love. And then both of them have 512 of storage. You can see that here, right here, 512 of storage. Now, as far as these displays go, you know, the Honor says it's supposed to get up to 5,000 peak brightness. Now, of course, we all know that that's during certain videos, and only partially during those videos will it display a higher rate of bit rate, you know, different scenes or whatever. Whereas on the Oppo, its max is 2,500, I believe, or 2,600. I'm looking here at the specs, and it says right on GSM Arena 2,500. But when you look at these things side by side, what you can see here in this video, outside in the shade, is it any brighter? I mean, the Honor is on the right and the Oppo is on the left, as you can see there. It's quite obvious. Does one look brighter than the other? And I set them manually to max brightness. So, you know, I'm not really seeing any difference. The only difference I'm seeing in these two is the crease on the Honor, you know, when you go to the angle here. And as you can see, they're both all the way up. I think I had to bump up they're pretty much the same. So now we can see the difference here in direct sunlight. And if you can't tell, the Honor is actually on the left. Even though it looks larger, that's not it. You can see the camera placement. The Oppo is on the top right corner. So anyway, it is brighter in direct sunlight. You can see that with the Honor. It is quite a bit brighter. They're both at full, and I'm using 4K HDR video so that it will go bright on the different highlights. And I'm seeing that it's quite clear that the Honor is brighter out there in direct sunlight. So there you have it. In a specific scenario, yes, the Honor Magic was brighter outside in direct sunlight. But how many of us sit in direct sunlight to look at our screens? Not me. I'm going for the closest bit of shade so I can see them both. So I think as far as both screens go, they're both really great in or outside. And as far as the external screen, I know some of you are going to want to know, so we'll take a look at that real quick. I'm going to show you here the external screens. Pretty much the same situation. I know a lot of you want to know which one is brighter. And as you can see here, it's pretty much the same scenario. The Honor on the left is a little bit brighter, but not enough to really make a big difference. Now, I know there's a few of you that want to know about the sound, so let's go ahead and test that out. I'll set my mic up right here in front of the two of them. So let's start right here with the Honor Magic. Turn that volume up here. Right back into it with the Oppo Find N6 versus the OnePlus Open. Let's get right into the nighttime photography. That thing's pretty loud. Let's go ahead. Oppo Find N6 versus the OnePlus Open. Let's get right into the nighttime photography. Let's go. Let's go ahead and look at some night shots. Okay, here. Now, I wish I had some tools to where I could really measure the base on these because they're very close. Let's go ahead and look at some night shots. Okay, here we are at nighttime on both of them. Check this out. You got a night. We are at nighttime on both of them. Check this out. You got a night shot here, using the ultra wide, and they both kind of flare the light in the ultra wide, and they both kind of flare the light the same. Now, I think that the Honor Magic is just barely a little bit more base here, but not enough that you could really tell. You might have to be in person to see it. I don't think you could really tell on this video. Now, I know a lot of you want to know, well, how are they at gaming? How about the power? You know, and I love to test these things, and you know, the thing I do all the time is real world, because you can do specs. And check this out. This is what the specs show us. So I run a Geekbench test on both of them, and you can see here, got them side by side here, about to finish. And I believe the Oppo N6 actually finishes this test faster than the Honor Magic V5. Well, why is that? Well, it should. It's got the faster chip in it, having that Snapdragon 8 Gen Elite 5. And you can see the specs on both of these. You've got really close, okay, and not a whole lot of difference. You got 7 cores in the Oppo and 8 cores in the V5. I wonder if that's what's bringing them closer together. You got that 2800 single core and 3200, almost 3300 single core performance on the Oppo N6. But then when you look at the multi-core, they're really, really close. You got 8690 on the Honor and 8933 on the Oppo. So the Oppo does outperform the Honor in benchmark tests. So let me show you another test. We have that 3D mark test where you can do wildlife extreme stress test. So check out the results. So you can see the results here on the wildlife extreme stress test. The Honor actually performed its best loop. It did higher than that of the Oppo N6. And even its lowest scored higher than the Oppo N6. Was it because of the 7 cores versus the 8? You know, it's really hard to say. And you can see here on this test, what the Oppo did is it actually tested itself and it did a quick drop. It did not sustain much at all because of the heat. It allowed itself to throttle and just kind of stayed an even score here all the way through the test. Where you can see on the Honor Magic, it didn't drop off quite as quickly as the Oppo. It sustained for quite a bit longer, and then it went up and down throughout the test, but at a higher level than the Oppo did. And then when we look at the temperatures, check this out. Well, I guess we can look at the battery first. The battery on the Honor Magic V5, you know, it dropped, what's this, 13%? That's quite a bit. But as you can see here, that's because it was running hotter and performing at a higher rate. Versus the Oppo, it only dropped 10%. So that's not bad. And you can see here, it looks like the Oppo was a little bit higher temperature early, where The Honor stayed at a little lower in the beginning, but then revved up to 90 or 49 Celsius, where you stayed at 45 was the high, the max on the Oppo. That's because it's throttling. But look at the frame rate from 15 to 46, 14 to 42. So the Honor had a better frame rate throughout this test. So as far as efficiency, well, the Oppo wins here on efficiency. You can tell by the battery here, and so it's giving it a higher stability score than the Honor, but that's simply because of battery rate and the heating. So it gets a better score because of heating and battery. But again, what does that really tell us? So, you know me, I do practical tests. So let's jump right into that. So I like to do a performance test, but before we do, I'm going to show you here that I've got them both here in performance mode, because a lot of folks are saying, you know, complaining, oh, you don't put that in performance mode or that phone in high performance. So you can see they're both in performance mode here. So we're going to see how they perform together at the same time. And what we're going to do is I'm going to close all the apps that were open first, and then we're going to go ahead and open up InShot. And with InShot, I will download I think it's 11 or close to a 12-minute clip, and we're going to go ahead and render that clip, both of them. And this is real world performance, okay? Because rendering a video is what really takes it out of these chips or out of these phones. And let's see which one performs better. And this is a practical use because I actually do render videos on my phones when I do shorts and sometimes the long format, depending on where I'm at. So here we go. They're both set at 4K. And we're going to start the phones first, then hit that stopwatch. And I will speed up as we go, but you can see here they both getting started slow and about the same pace. But then all of a sudden, check this out, the Honor seems to jump ahead. Look at this. We are at 50% and the Honor's at 50%. It's jumping quite a bit ahead of the Oppo. 4 minutes and 4 seconds. And the Oppo was still at 80%. So about 20% faster on the Honor than the Oppo on this test. That's pretty crazy, folks. So you see, this was a simple test, but it was nearly a 12-minute video, and it took 5 minutes and 20 seconds for the Oppo to complete this rendering, so it was not a real quick job, and they both heated up. And of course, the Honor finished it in 4 minutes and 4 seconds. So 20% faster than the Oppo, or time-wise, as you see here, 1 minute and 16 seconds faster. So let's just talk real quickly why this is happening. Well, that Gen 5 chip is made for sustaining a certain amount of performance over time, a longer span of time than what you have on the Honor. The Honor just really kicks it into high gear. It's a sprinter right up the front. And then it slows down and gets a nice even pace, where the Oppo slows down earlier and finds that even stride. So supposedly, because the Gen 5 is such a high performance, it really puts out the heat. So they throttle it down. And that's why I thought they went with 7 cores instead of 8, so that they could perform better. So it uses less battery and doesn't heat up as much. So you can use it for a longer period of time. Say you're gaming for an hour, you know, it's not going to heat up as much as this. But as you saw in that demonstration with the 3D Mark, that was a good, I think it was over 30 minutes long, and the temperature between the two of them was not much different. So why the Gen 5? Well, I think because it looks pretty on paper. You know, they can really tout better performance, you know, better on the battery, you know, versus the previous gen. But, you know, this one did really well as well. So I'm just not buying the 5 gen chip that much. I think the 8 Elite does just as well, if not better. And in these tests, and I've been doing them over a year, I have still yet to find a phone that's beating the V5. And several months ago, maybe even almost a year ago, you know, I made a video, and you can see the thumbnail here where it says specs lie. Well, I think that's still true today, even more so. Now, we just saw in this last segment that, you know, as far as battery consumption, this one really, the Honor Magic, will burn up the battery faster in performance. Again, the battery usage, this thing being a 6,000 milliamp hour battery, this would be a 5820. They're really, really close. But I'm guessing, I would assume that the Oppo N6 is going to outlast the V5 as far as use. I have not tested that yet. So tell me, what do you think so far? What do you think about this comparison? I really like the OI on the Oppo better. It's really cool. I like the way it works. There is some nuances to it that I don't like, and the reason why I carry the Honor Magic V5 over this as my data user. I do carry them both with me, but when I go to reach to do certain things, I grab the Honor Magic because it just simply does a whole lot better than the Oppo does. Now, if you want to know what that is, well, guess what? You need to watch Monday's video, because in Monday's video, we're going to actually put the cameras against each other and talk more about those, because doing all this in one video is just too long. So Monday, we're going to cover the cameras and other things. So for now, tell me what you think. Leave a comment down below, and if I missed something and you want to make sure I cover it in the next video, go ahead and put that in there as well, and I can make sure to cover that over the weekend. Now, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel so you don't miss out on all these different tests and comparisons, make sure to do that so you don't miss out. And until next time, have a wonderful day, and God bless.